Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFP podcast. This is Jorge Martin Familia. I'm just pumped about this one, but first off, got to make sure you are liking and subscribing us on YouTube. Por favor. I can't thank you enough. You guys have been coming out ever since we started the NFL Insider series. Please just give us a like and subscribe, little thumbs up. Really appreciate it. And as you guys know, we're a proud member of the Fantasy Points Media Group. I mean, Familia, it's we've been having a great time. Please make sure you're going to fantasypoints.com, get 10% off whenever you put in the promo code 22familia10, or in Spanish 22familia10. But just so many great minds from the fantasy industry. Everybody's going to help you come out and do so well in your fantasy leagues and help you win your leagues. Just so much great content in there. And speaking of great content, I'm telling you, this is someone who I've revered for a long time, and now I'm very proud to call him a buen amigo, a compadre. Someone I tell you, I mean, gosh, since I had him on a year ago, we've kept on each other. But man, and I'm not blowing smoke when I say he's one of my favorite people. But Pat Fitzmaurice, Patricio, as Mauricio Gutierrez and I love to call him. He's been el hombre over at Fantasy Pros. He's not only been El Hombre, he's been the managing editor for Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. He's one of the best rankers out there. You want to follow his rankings. And really, on top of that, above being a buen amigo, he's just been someone who's been invaluable advice and support for Familia FFB. I mean, again, can't tell you how proud I am and grateful I am for his friendship, his amistad. And I'm proud to introduce El Señor Buen Amigo, Pat Fitzmaurice. Patricio, ¿cómo estás?
Jorge, it is so great to be on with you, and you're too kind and too flattering, but the feeling is very mutual, my friend. It's just been so good getting to know you, and we always have a great time when we hang out and when we talk, and, it's not just football, it's food, family, music, baseball. Whenever we talk, it's just, I always enjoy myself so much. I know I'm going to enjoy myself immensely talking to you here today.
Yeah, because we share, these are a few of my favorite things when it comes down to all the things we love to talk about. But oh man, it's already been an incredible 2 weeks, and we're just to give everybody a quick FYI, we're recording this before Monday Night Football games take place, so we're going to make sure that we get you ready for the games. But it's already been an epic first 2 weeks of the season, and I mean, there have been some that have just blown us out. There's so much of talk, especially in baseball. It's early. In football, I think things are a little bit sped up. When do you stop saying it's early and kind of the season is what it is, the players are who they are?
Good question. Maybe I'm giving it more time than I used to just because of the shortened preseason.
Yeah.
It seems like, and now really so many teams just don't want to put their stars on the field at all. So we see so little game action in the preseason. And it seems like we need a couple of weeks to see things shake out a little bit. So it's maybe not until weeks 3 or weeks 4, maybe around the start of October, where I'm like, okay, this is what it is. And, but it does take some time. Like I don't know if I fully trust what I see in weeks 1 and 2. Some interesting clues, but I feel like we're still in the settling in mode.
And that's the thing. I mean, because there were so many polar opposites from week 1 to week 2, and I mean, you looked at some of the matchups, and I mean, I didn't see the Jets coming to win on the road in Cleveland. They were my survivor pick, so luckily the remainders also got knocked out because they picked Cincinnati. But yeah, nobody sees these guys coming, and I just I still want to say I'm with you. I kind of feel like it's that what used to be the quarter of the season where, okay, I feel like we know who the offenses are, kind of some things start to settle down. But one of the teams that had kind of like the polar opposites, your hometown Packers. Week 1 was nothing to write home about. And then yesterday, week 2 on Sunday Night Football, great defense, let the running game dictate the game. And to me, one of the big things was the number of rushing attempts versus passes. 33 rush attempts, 25 passes. I mean, you got one of the great quarterbacks of all time. But with that incredible defense that I think we had talked about, that we expected that the Packers were going to be better on that side of the ball. It's kind of like the script that we're looking at, and can possibly Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon kind of be league winners in this scenario?
I think so. I think they want to run this offense through the running backs, Jorge. And without Devontae Adams, I mean, we saw it in the Bears game where they really spread the targets around. There weren't many because they got the running back friendly game script, and Aaron Jones had a fantastic game, and A.J. Dillon was involved too. Not a spectacular game for him, but a decent one. And I think it's not always going to be like that. I think there are going to be Dillon games and Aaron Jones games. But I think both of these guys are pretty good investments just because that's kind of the way they need to play without Devontae Adams. But it didn't work out so well in week one. One of the big things was they got Elton Jenkins back on the offensive line. He's one of the unsung heroes, one of the 15 or 20 best offensive linemen in the league. They're still missing one in David Bakhtiari, and I don't know when he's going to be back. He's just had a hard time coming back, yes, from his ACL. I mean, too bad because he was maybe the premier left tackle in the game, but getting Jenkins back was a big help, and I think that made a lot of difference between week one and week two for them.
How about the receivers? Can we get any inkling on who's going to be a lead dog on them? I'm stumped.
Yeah, I'm not. A lot of people have been optimistic that Allen Lazard was going to turn into this go-to guy, Jorge, and I'm not sure I can buy it. We haven't seen enough evidence of him commanding targets in the past. The prospect pedigree, okay, but nothing special. So I think he'll be involved, but I think we'll see Lazard games. We'll see Sammy Watkins games. We'll see the rookies Dobbs and Watson get involved. But I'm not anxious to race any of these Packers receivers into my starting lineups.
I kind of get a little bit of that feeling like what Mahomes said about his receivers, where it was, sorry, fantasy folks, it's going to be a different guy every week.
Yep. Yeah, it is like that. I mean, it's not with Devontae Adams, it was just so predictable, and he was going to get force-fed targets, and now it just seems like Rodgers is content to throw to the open guy, whoever that may be, and he's probably going to throw to the backs a lot too this year. I think Aaron Jones and we saw A.J. Dillon lead the team in targets in week one, and out of necessity. I mean, I think we'll see Robert Tonyan have some weeks, but really hard to trust any one wide receiver on the Packers.
No, it really is tough. It really is tough. But you know what? I guess we'll keep an eye on it. I think for me, and we'll talk about the rookies in a second, because I think there's a narrative there to be built. But first off, I want to talk about quarterbacks. I mean, thankfully Rodgers is healthy, because the NFL is better when he's healthy. But it feels like we're getting some injuries and some underperformance that could be having some people tilting. And it's kind of like three guys off the top at the beginning. You got injuries with Justin Herbert and Dak Prescott, which hopefully gets, they're able to overcome them. I mean, Herbert will be quicker than Prescott. Best wishes to Trey Lance. Adios mio, that one was hurting. But, I'm gonna talk about a couple quarterbacks and their situations. We can discuss. First off, I'm going to start with the Broncos and Russell Wilson. I don't think any of us saw this coming.
No, and the play calling has been a bit suspect, to say the least, from Nathaniel Hackett. And it just, man, he seems like he's playing it so conservatively, Jorge. He just almost like coaching scared. And it's strange. I mean, you would love to see Russell Wilson challenge defenses downfield with those receivers. I mean, we saw him hit a big one to Jerry Jeudy in week one. Now Judy's hurt, which further complicates things. It's just Cortland Sutton, and with no Jerry Jeudy and no Tim Patrick, of course, who they lost. That's such a blow. Going from having this wide receiver position be a source of strength to now being pretty questionable. And I'm just I'm not real optimistic about this Denver offense, just from what we've seen, the lack of creativity, and that third and short where they did the end around to Andrew Beck was like one of the worst play calls I think I've seen in the last year or two.
Oh,
Just hard to fathom what they were thinking there. And, we thought they were going to let Russ cook in Denver, but apparently that's not the case.
because yeah, I mean, you heard this talk that they were that he and Nathaniel Hackett were like building the plane the plan the game plan together, and you're just not seeing it. I mean, these don't look like plays that Russ wants to call, and it's I think you talked about the preseason being, and this is a team that did not play any players during the preseason. I mean, maybe we're in the preseason right now with these guys, and it's going to be somewhere like week 4 or 5.
Yeah, that's the hope that they're getting the bugs out. And but at this point, got to feel a little bad for Russ. He gets booed in Seattle in week 1. Then he gets booed by his his own fans in week 2. And and now going into week 3 with a standalone primetime game against the 49ers. And if the fans don't like what they see early in that one, I think they're going to let Nathaniel Hackett and Russ know about it.
Yeah, and the 49ers definitely know how to defend Russ. So
Yes, we've seen that.
Okay, Joe Burrow and the Bengals are it is it time to start getting worried about him? I'm worried about that line.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be okay. I think individually that offensive line looks a lot better than it did last year, but maybe it just takes time to consolidate the talent and for everyone to get on the same page. That's the hope. And I will say that Joe Burrow maybe stresses an offensive line more than most quarterbacks. Like that guy will hold on to the ball looking to make a play downfield. So I think he's always going to take a few more sacks than the average quarterback, but maybe with a little bit of time, we see a little more cohesion, a little bit better protection. But man, it's looked a lot like where we left off last year in the playoffs with Burrow, just eating sack after sack after sack.
One thing that I did notice, he's looking a little more spry back there, maybe, feeling more healthy, more confident in the knee. I saw him, do some scrambles, especially some up the middle. When it looked like coverage wasn't going because it wasn't cooperating. But I will say you and I are on the same page. We both had Jamar Chase above Justin Jefferson, so in our rankings. So we're both very invested in Joe Burrow
Yes.
being good. The 49ers, we talked about him with now Jimmy G basically did not practice with the team or with a playbook for the first month, coming off the shoulder injury. I mean, I kind of feel like it's still too much to ask to even have him be as good as it was last year without having a real offseason.
Yeah, we'll see. That's the thing. Like people talked about the benching of Trey Lance being an inevitability, and there was such I don't know. I felt such pessimism for Lance from maybe the start of August on, and I don't know. I was just clinging to hope with him that like the arm talent would take over. I know he was throwing a lot of interceptions in training camp, and things didn't seem to be trending well. I was just hoping things were going to get better for him. I feel so bad for the kid. Yeah, we'll have to see with Jimmy G. I mean, they're going to go back to sort of the ball control offense that they were running last year. Maybe he is the better guy for Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and the various contributors to fantasy. I mean, maybe Jimmy is the guy who helps those guys go. I'm not so sure that Trey Lance wouldn't have been able to get those guys going, but we're back to where we were last year, and maybe that's not the worst thing if you invested in those guys.
Yeah, and I mean, we also got to keep in mind Deebo Samuel had just an otherworldly season with Jimmy G primarily in the back, leading that backfield. So hopefully, they've got so many good skill players that it's hard to really get to get excited with Jimmy G. But then again, we were going to see it's those guys make a lot of the plays on their own anyway with yards after the catch,
True.
all three, including Kittle. So we're going to see on that one. Well, I want to go on the flip side, kind of like unexpected in a good way, because I don't think anyone saw a 6 TD performance coming from Tua Tagovailoa in Baltimore. I know Baltimore's secondary has been banged up of late, and it's kind of looking a little bit like it was at the back half of last year. But man, 51 fantasy points. I mean, seriously, 469 yards. I mean, how much fun was that to have happen, considering all the kind of the Twitter hate that Tua's been taking?
That was such a fun game. I mean, that was the game of week 2, maybe of the season so far, and a great one to watch. And this one was like, I don't know about you, Jorge, but like I had a hard time getting my head around that situation coming into this season. Like, I've been kind of a Tua optimist. I mean, I liked him a lot when he was at Alabama, but I was willing to settle for average fantasy quarterback, so around quarterback 15 or so in my rankings. But then, like I was ready to have Jalen Waddle be a top 10 receiver after the 100 catch rookie year. And then Tyreek Hill comes in and like, boy, this is going to hurt both guys. Tyreek Hill gets a quarterback downgrade. And now, he's got like another, even though, of course, he was sharing targets with Travis Kelce in Kansas City, he's got Jalen Waddle there. And, I certainly wasn't feeling very optimistic for Waddle after Tyreek Hill shows up. So, maybe I was just a little too low on all of those guys. Certainly it's not going to look like it looked in Baltimore every week. And you mentioned it. The Ravens did have Marcus Peters back from a torn ACL, but probably not at 100%. Marlon Humphrey back from a groin injury, probably not at 100%. And it's pretty hard to cover Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle if you're not 100% physically fit. So, not surprised that maybe things were a little rough with the coverage in that game. But, boy, it looked really good, and you have to be excited about how this offense looks, at least. I mean, they're playing to his strengths.
And you know what? It felt a little bit like Alabama Tua yesterday for the first time in the NFL.
Yes.
And that to me was fun. I mean, hey, I get to watch Justin Herbert every week, so I'm glad it worked out the way it did, but I was rooting for him. And I think one of the things that the big takeaways was that the Dolphins coming into the season, they weren't hoping for him to be Justin Herbert. They were hoping to be some reasonable facsimile of Drew Brees, that kind of player. And if we get something close to this, I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be really cool. It's going to be almost as cool as those shades that Mike McDaniel was wearing on the sidelines yesterday.
He is a stylish man, isn't he? And not only running a stylish offense, but looking good on the sideline while doing it.
I know. I think those are going to be the new Joe. They're going to be the 2.0 of the Joe Shiesty shades from last year that become all the rage when it comes to the NFL fashion. But and you know what? I'm 100% in agreement with you. I think Waddle was a guy that I downgraded a little bit more, thinking that Tyreek was still going to get his, but I also found it impossible to think that Tyreek was going to get 160 targets like he got last year in an offense that was going to feature the running game. But I mean, if we get a lot of that where they're just speed on speed, give me more of it. It's going to be interesting how it translates, because they've got some tough AFC East games in the cold in December and January. So it'll be interesting to see how that offense kind of translates at that point. There was one thing I wanted to a quick sidelight, because part of that game yesterday, and I remembered in our Kings Classic draft, you ended up with the stack of Lamar Jackson and Rashad Bateman. I remember we were talking like during one of the breaks and how pumped you were about that one. So how loco did you go when you were watching them kind of go off yesterday? Especially Lamar.
And it kind of a super stack, Jorge, because I've got Mark Andrews on that team also, on the auction team. So, yeah, it was kind of a bonanza yesterday, and that team is off to a pretty good start, 2-0, and riding high in total points. But as you remember, Jorge, we had the auction first and then the snake draft after that. And apparently I used up all my mental energy on the auction because my snake draft team is, just horrible. I think I'm going to be 14th out of 14 teams in total points after week 2. Trey Lance was my quarterback. That didn't work out too well. I guess I'm going to have to turn to Trevor Lawrence now. That team has not gotten off to a flying start, but I'm pretty happy with the auction team.
Yeah, and Trevor Lawrence has not been horrible of late, but yeah,
Not bad.
you're right. Yeah, well, on the auction team, we ended up with Tyreek Hill, so he buoyed the team for for very much yesterday. That was amazing. But that I don't know what was more amazing, that or the fact that is Carson Wentz going to be good for fantasy again? I mean, yeah, he's right now going into Monday Night Football. He's the QB4 with after throwing for 337 yards and 3 TDs. Is the world ready for this?
It's interesting. I mean, I like that he's got these three electric weapons now
Yes.
to go to with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, who looks fantastic and played. You know, it was kind of a surprise first round pick to some people. There were some people wondering whether he might make it into the second, but he was picked mid first, and he's looked the part so far. Very good. I mean, I watched a lot of him at Penn State, like him. And Scott Turner loves Curtis Samuel, so he's gotten Samuel involved too. I know McLaurin and Dotson are averaging like 15 and 14 yards average depth of target, whereas Curtis Samuel's like 3.3 yards. So he's used in a very specific way. But all these guys are certainly helping Wentz. Logan Thomas, not a bad tight end. He's got a couple of good pass catching backs. But he's also thrown 3 interceptions. He's taken 6 sacks. It's going to be a roller coaster ride with Carson Wentz all season. I mean, there are times where somehow I don't think when the dust settles at the end of the season, we're going to see Carson Wentz in the top 10 at quarterback. Stranger things have happened, but we'll see. At least we're getting some good to go along with the not so good you're going to get with Carson Wentz.
Hopefully. I mean, and I think one of the things, and I remember this from last year. He had a streak. I think it was 6 or 7 games in a row where he threw at least 2 touchdowns in every game last year. So this can happen. So I remember one of the things from my preseason interview with Manny Chakuba of Taking Command. He pointed out 2 things. He said, number one, Carson Wentz has never had these type of weapons, and really over the last since Kirk Cousins left, this is the best quarterback that Washington has had. So it's I mean the combination is working. I mean, yeah, Samuel. Maybe it was just he needed some health. I mean, you Ohio State guy, you being a Big Ten guy, I'm sure you got to see more of him than you wanted to,
Yes.
for so long. So good to see him doing it in the NFL and not tormenting your Badgers. So
Yeah, exactly. Ohio State torments us enough, and they're going to do it again this Saturday, I'm sure.
ay Dios mío, ay Dios mío. Okay, I'm gonna light a veladora for you and your
Oh, thank
Badgers
you.
on that one.
We
So
need it. We need it, Jorge.
you need a hero. And speaking of heroes, you and I are both hero RB aficionados. You know, early returns, considering the fact that so many good wide receivers are doing well early, does that seem to be obviously it's still early as we are warning people. Early returns, does that appear to be the winning strategy?
I think it was a good strategy. I mean, I feel vindicated in my belief that, Cooper Kupp deserved to be a top 3 pick. And that, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, like I really, after Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey, I was basically looking to take a wide receiver after those 2 guys had gone in the first round because I really didn't trust any of the running backs. Maybe wrong not to trust Saquon, who in some cases would even fall out of the first round, many cases actually, but like didn't have a great feeling about Najee Harris. Dalvin Cook, I mean, I like him a lot. Terrific when he's healthy, but would have rather had one of the receivers. Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, go down the list. Like I always kind of felt better about those wide receivers. And in some cases, you could get Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson kind of late in the first round and maybe pair them with a Devontae Adams or a Stephon Diggs coming back in the second round. I mean, that's a pretty spicy start. And, I don't mind like fishing for running backs a little later. Right now we've seen like I'm not sure where to hang your hat at running back so far this season. Like there aren't many who have put together like 2 good games coming out of the gate. So I don't mind those wide receiver heavy builds. And we're still looking for the heroes at running back. They're in short supply.
Uh, you know, I think the JT people maybe tilted a little bit yesterday, but he had enough. He's not going to run 9 times any
Right.
time. I mean, he's going to be in the double digits every game during the season. And McCaffrey did get 100 yards, over 100 total yards yesterday. But no, it's the heroes. I mean, to me, the other thing was feeling good. The big three at the beginning, but feeling good about Diggs and Adams. I think that was an easy call. To me, it was easy to take either of those guys over a Derrick Henry or any of the any of the Mixon, any of the. I just felt better. I'm with you. I felt better about that, and I now I'm feeling better about where I had Tyreek Hill ranked. I had him behind those. I think behind those guys and Debo Samuel, but still very much in the second round. I was big on Saquon. I've got a couple teams with Saquon as my hero. A couple teams where Saquon I got in the third round where I was just like I was able to sneak someone in. But yeah, then it was like hammer receiver, and especially through the running back dead zone. I was just like, stay away from that. Give me the receivers at that point, and I feel really happy about those teams.
Yeah, I may have dipped into the running back dead zone a little too eagerly with some guys. The Travis Etienne shares have not done well so far. But there were some instances, and that's the funny thing, Jorge, where we talk about the hero running back. Like in some cases, a lot of cases, Saquon Barkley and DeAndre Swift were going later than Derrick Henry and Najee Harris. And if you you could pick those guys up early in the second round in a lot of drafts. And Barkley and Swift I guess Swift has been one of the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Not only the big game in week one, but then like sort of iffy. I know a lot of people had lineup questions involving DeAndre Swift in week two. And, the people who stuck with him, not worried about the workload, they were rewarded yesterday because he came through. He's a tough dude, and that offense is a fun one. So maybe
Yeah.
he's a guy you can ride the entire season and be that hero for you.
That was one thing. Yeah, yeah, being that was a take that I was kind of happy about is saying that telling people Detroit's offense, there's going to be some gold there. So not fool's gold. There's going to be some underrated players to grab there, and that's that. Yeah, that's been a lot of fun. Any chance with Dan Campbell, talking about talking about something fun. Give me more of that. Give me more Dan
Yes,
Campbell, all
yes.
gas, no break. Oh no, he's not all gas, no breaks. He's Mr. Biting kneecaps and everything. Um, well, you touched on Jahan Dotson a little bit, and I kind of it's real. We saw 3 more kind of pseudo to real breakouts last week. We had Garrett Wilson going 8 catches, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns with on 14 targets. He had Drake London, who got 12 targets, caught 8 of them, 86 yards and a touchdown. Olave, again, Ohio State, sorry. But him and Wilson, 13 targets. He caught 5 of them for 80 yards and yeah, Dotson. I mean, I almost feel like since the year that AJ Brown and DK Metcalf kind of came on in the second half of the season, and obviously what we've seen from Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase the last couple of years, are we kind of like firmly in an era do not under any circumstances sleep on rookie wide receivers?
Yeah, especially the ones with first round draft capital. And I think if
Mm-hmm.
you look at the last couple of years, those guys have been criminally underdrafted. Like Jamar Chase, people were a little worried when he had the drops in training camp. And he goes like wide receiver 31 or 32 or whatever his ADP was and paid off pretty handsomely last year. And Justin Jefferson was in the 30s, I think, with his ADP.
Yeah.
And Jalen Waddle, was a value. I think he was in the 40s with his ADP. So there's some fantastic bargains to be had. And the one who really stands out now, Jorge, is Garrett Wilson.
Oh,
And I know that for me personally, like I had some issues with his quarterbacking and, liking Elijah Moore a lot and having respect for Corey Davis kind of made me wonder where the targets were going to come from and were they going to be, Zach Wilson targets, which are not worth as much, obviously, as Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert targets. So, like, I was finding uh, it was hard to see the path to playability for Garrett Wilson in fantasy. But like sometimes I think we just let the circumstances get in the way of the talent, and that this guy
yes.
was a clear top 10 quality pick and immensely talented and just a great route runner and fast and explosive and like all those things. And we should not have been sleeping on this guy the way we were. And I think I had a little bit of an epiphany on that. Like my last couple of drafts, like my last 3 home league drafts, Jorge, I pulled Garrett Wilson out of 2 of them. Like I want a share of this guy just in case I've been making a big mistake by not touching this guy all draft season. And I'm kind of glad I did.
Yeah, I got shut out. He's, I think, the only rookie wide receiver that I got shut out on in my home leagues. Just because I think I was focusing on Dotson and Olave. Again, just I think it just came out where the point in the draft that they were coming, and I was all in on Romeo Dobbs, so I wanted him as my last pick in any league that I could possibly get.
But yeah, and Drake London looked fantastic in week 2. Great breakout for him. And I'm still really optimistic about Treylon Burks, that he becomes the clear go-to receiver for the Titans. Like, I think there's a lot of opportunity for him. And Burks is the one who kind of reminded me of the Jamar Chase, where this guy was clearly a very obvious talent. And, didn't quite measure as big as people wanted him to at the combine, didn't quite run as fast. But this guy was just a baller at Arkansas. And, people were down on him because he had trouble with the conditioning and he had asthma and all this. And I felt like that was the equivalent of Jamar Chase's case of the drops last August, where people were just fading him more than they should have. So I'm still very optimistic about him. I'm not taking any victory laps because he hasn't done it yet, but I'm hoping Burks is one of those guys who proves to be another great rookie value at wide receiver.
Yeah, and another guy that we haven't mentioned that I've got some optimism for down the road is Sky Moore, just because I like the talent, but also just the offense. And one thing that stuck with me, Josh Briscoe from Sports Illustrated, when we sat down to talk about the Chiefs, he pointed out that Andy Reid offenses are tough for rookie wide receivers to pick up. So he goes, if you're picking up more, you're thinking about him for the back half of the season when they're the most important games of the season for you anyway. So he's another guy to keep in mind. And, we didn't talk about, I mentioned Dobbs, Christian Watson. Do you think he'll get out of the doghouse enough to get another 75-yard bomb to catch? I'm hoping for him.
I think eventually, in the fact that he has not been frozen out, and they seem to like running reverses to him, which is good. Like, let this big dude, because just with his size and speed, that is a special package of skills. You don't get too many 6'4", 6'5" guys who run as fast as he does. So, he's going to be one of these guys who, played at a small school, didn't play against top-rate competition, and didn't even really see that many targets in college. So it might take a little bit of time with him, but I'm optimistic he's going to pay off. Maybe he's a guy who takes 2 years, but I think people are eventually going to like having Christian Watson on their fantasy teams.
Yeah. Dynasty players hold.
Yes.
So yes, please hold. Please hold. Last one, kind of on the football side. Any other trends that you're going to kind of keep an eye on for the rest of the season, or hot takes / predictions you want to take back?
Well, let's talk about a trend, Jorge. And this is kind of a bleak one. Like, I don't want to bring down your audience here, but like every year we get optimistic about the tight end position and like it's fixed. Like things are going to be better. There's this new wave of young talent coming, and finally there are going to be enough tight ends to go around in a 12-team league. And then it's amazing how we get disappointed every year at tight end. And now it's Kyle Pitts not being worked into the offense, and Arthur Smith is asked about it after the game in week 2, and he says, we're not playing fantasy football, we're trying to win. Well, don't you think getting the ball to Kyle Pitts would improve your chances of win? This guy you picked 4th overall. We've seen, TJ Hawkinson, who people thought was a mid-range tight end 1, is basically being evaporated by Amon-Ra St. Brown turning into this superstar. And I think we're going to be talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown being on the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase level pretty soon, because this guy is a spectacular talent.
Yes.
So much fun to watch. Cole Comet, who some people thought was going to be a cheap path to, maybe like a sneaky tight end 1, And, unfortunately, the Bears' new offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, doesn't really believe in the forward pass. So Cole Komet has been shut out in his first 2 games. Tight end is as bleak as ever. Jorge, maybe even bleaker. And, I'm not sure we're going to get, we've had a few guys be pleasant surprises. I guess, Tyler Higbee has turned out to be the number 2 target in the Rams ahead of Allen Robinson. We didn't really see that coming. There are a few rays of hope, but for the most part, tight end is a pit of despair once again.
Yeah, I'm so with you on that one. I've got enough Kyle Pitts that I'm just kind of like, I've answered questions of what do I do with Kyle Pitts? Like you drafted him in the 2nd or 3rd round or 4th round you're playing him, and you just got to figure that it's gonna be better days ahead. So just hope on hope. But
yes.
But if you grab Pat Freiermuth, don't worry about sneaking him in your lineup. Maybe not sitting him.
Yeah, Freiermuth has been one of those guys, and I was fading him because of all the target competition, didn't like the quarterback thing. That was another case, like very much like Garrett Wilson, where I just kind of didn't like the situation and just overlooked that this guy is a really good football player. So I'm optimistic for him, and should have drafted him in more leagues. I don't think I have Pat Freiermuth anywhere, and I really wish I did.
Oh, I actually, and one of the first time I drafted him was in the Scott Fish Bowl, and I was kind of regretting it because I thought there were a couple wide receivers I could have passed up, but now I'm plenty happy. I'm
sure.
Plenty happy. I know for me, one of the things was the year 2 quarterbacks, kind of, looking at them with hope. And now with the Lance injury and Zach Wilson being hurt at the start of the season and Justin Fields only throwing it 11 times in a game, I'm kind of worried about these guys. I mean, I think Lawrence is taking a step forward, but Mac Jones is having some tough times with injuries. I don't know if we're going to get like filling in, elite quarterbacks from a fantasy standpoint, which is what we always seem to need, especially in superflex leagues.
Yeah, I'm excited about the development of Lawrence. I do think Fields will be good eventually. It's just, confusing that the Bears are just so unwilling to throw right now. I mean, 28 dropbacks, I think, in the first two weeks is just kind of hard to fathom. Jury very much out on Zach Wilson. Trey Lance's career has gotten off to a nightmarish start. Mac Jones, just like game manager at best, and we're not even sure if he's going to be a good game manager. So I don't want to always kick the can down the road. We are looking at a pretty good class of 2023 at quarterback. Hopefully we get some answers to our prayers there, Jorge. But this second year group, more bad than good so far.
Yeah, and that was a group that was so ballyhooed. So hopefully, I mean, I know even the 2023 class could take a little while, but yeah, and since it's early, there's no hot takes that we need to take back. So I don't think so. Well, I want to talk music for a quick second because on your wonderful Fits on Fantasy podcast, which Familia, if you're not listening to it, you need to pick it up because it's one of the great weekly conversations where you can kind of you end up getting so much information you didn't even realize it because the conversation is so free flowing, very similar to how we're having it here. But one of the things I've heard you talk a lot about is 90s rock of late with your guests. And, we're both about, similar in age. So we've both had a lot of the same music through our lives. I full disclosure, Familia, I'm more partial. You guys probably already know I'm more partial to the 70s and 80s rock and roll music, and to kind of show my age. But are the 90s more favored, or have you been kind of has that been just kind of like a talking point with your guests?
I think it has been lately, for one, because I had my colleague Matthew Friedman on, and he is a noted 90s rock aficionado. But I'm also an 80s guy, Jorge, and I know you are a big U2 fan. I'm a big U2 fan also. That was the band that carried me through high school and college. Love REM. played
Oh
the
yes,
REM division of the Scott Fishbowl last year with a member of REM, Mike Mills, the bassist, and
how cool is
that
that?
was a thrill of a lifetime. And for my money, they're like the best American band of all time. So there is a lot of '80s music in my collection. The Replacements, Husker Du, The Cure.
Oh, The
So
Cure.
yeah, The Cult,
Uh-huh.
like lots of '80s stuff, and of course, like I grew up on classic rock, so I'm a Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd guy. I've had developed a newfound appreciation for yacht rock lately. Like
Ooh.
that's like just like in the car, I'll put on
Uh-huh.
the yacht rock station on Sirius or the '70s channel, and just yeah. So like yeah, I kind of shut it off after about the year 2000. Stopped seeking out new music. A little bit every once in a while, a little bit will creep in, and someone will make me a recommendation that I like. But yeah, '70s, '80s, '90s, they're like my children, Jorge. I can't pick out a favorite. They're all fantastic.
I know when it comes to the '70s, I mean, one of the interesting ones I don't think gets as much talk as it is because Zeppelin is great. But then you go a little bit later in that decade, the Police being a band
Yes.
that doesn't get as much. I actually got to interview Andy Summers one time, and
Oh,
I talked about that, and it was it was a thrill to hear him talk about that. I actually got to see them in their reunion tour in 2007, which was at Dodger Stadium, which was amazing. Them obviously Van Halen needs to get a lot. The mastery of Eddie Van Halen is R.I.P.
yeah. I was lucky enough to see an Amnesty International concert in Chicago in the mid '80s with the Police reunion and U2 and Peter Gabriel and Lou Reed and Robin Williams came out unannounced and did like 20-25 minutes of stand-up comedy. Yeah, and the Police, the Andy Summers thing, like he has a great memoir called One Train Later that I read, and the title comes from the fact that he and Stuart Copeland and Sting all met like at some party in London or something like that, and they just met and they talked about music, and then they all kind of went their separate ways that night, and that would have been it. Like nothing would have happened, but then Andy Summers and Stuart Copeland ran into each other on a train platform the next day and like resumed their conversation. And then, that kind of kept things alive, and they tracked down Sting and started that famous trio. But, I forget who, was late for a train or early for a train or something like, but had the timing not worked out, like the Police would have never come together. It was kind of a fluke. And, I'm sure there are a lot of stories like that throughout rock history of, serendipity, like bringing people together and making magical music.
Oh man, and you know what? Yeah, I think it was Andy Summers even called it that little spark that sometimes would come up between them that would the the creative differences that came out them so great. Oh, and on the '80s side, I think one of the albums that really uh, that really kind of took over the back half of the '80s was Appetite for Destruction with Guns N' Roses. I think is
Yeah, so I was in college at the time, Jorge, and that was like, I was not really into the hair metal scene too much, but I had a lot of friends and a lot of people on my dorm floor at the time who were into the hair metal scene, and like technically maybe Guns N' Roses was in that genre, but when that album came out, like everyone loved that album. Like the hair metal people, the non-hair metal people, the girls who were just into pop music, like everyone realize the mastery of that album. Like that was just, and there were a few albums that came out in that little time span. The Joshua Tree being one of
Mhm.
them, Appetite for Destruction, like where just everyone recognized the greatness of that album immediately, and it was everywhere. Like everyone had that album, everyone was playing that album all the time. Yeah, that was a special one.
Oh, just I remember I remember not wanting to like Guns N' Roses because I thought they were a hair band, and I was kind of anti hair band at the time. And then I actually listened to the lyrics of "Sweet Child of Mine," and and I was like, oh my god, this is a love song that's with a hard rocking sound wrapped around it, and just to me, I was hooked at that point, and then just everything else just came through. Oh, love it, love it. Okay, so I'm glad that you're not eschewing the 70s and 80s for just the 90s. So good. I'm glad I'm glad we're still simpatico on that side. So
Yes.
not that there would ever be a problem with us. But I want to know a quick baseball one. How are you feeling about your hometown Brewers? They're in a dogfight. Just it's 3 for 2. 3 teams playing for 2 spots. Them and the Padres and the Phillies.
Yeah, and we're what I think two games behind one, 2.5 behind the other. I don't know, Jorge. Like the pitching hasn't been as great as I would have hoped this year. Corbin Burns, your guy Devin Williams, they've been fantastic. The rest of it has not been as good as I thought it was going to be. Like their team ERA is hovering close to 4. Their team batting average is 235, and I know batting averages across MLB are way down. Like that's the era we're in. But I mean, like the leader in a batting average among qualifying guys on the team is like Christian Yelich at like 262. So it's been, after a pretty good start, kind of a letdown with both hitting and pitching. But I do have a great deal of respect for Craig Counsell. I think maybe he's, on the very short list of the best managers in baseball, if not the best. And he comes from my home village, a little village of 30,000 people or so, just north of Milwaukee. So, Craig's a legend there, and I do have faith in him. So I'm hoping that we can make one last push here. I forget how many. We've got about, like 18 games to go, 17 games left to go. It's getting down to it. So, I'm going to trust Craig here and hope he can sneak us into a wild card spot, and maybe we can do to the rest of MLB what the Nationals did to us a couple of years ago, and get in there, make some noise, get hot at the right time.
Yeah, and keep winning, keep coming back in clinch games and and somehow winning them. So I still have scars from Game 5 at Dodger Stadium when the Nationals did that to the Dodgers in 2019. So we're in the same page. We're in the same page. So
yeah, they broke both our hearts, the Nationals that year. Jorge, that was tough.
Well, I won't say anything about the Dodgers because I feel like I've already said too much on this podcast, and and plus we're playing with house money right now because this season has been spectacular. But last one, mi amigo, I want to know, you got any? Have you acquired any new Mexican food favorites? You gave me conejitos in Milwaukee last year for my buddy who's raving about it.
Oh, he likes it. Good.
Yeah.
I hope he's had the mole. It's some of the best mole I've ever had.
I gotta ask him.
Yeah, the chicken with the mole sauce is just a go-to, and the steak tacos are great too. Sadly, like I have not gotten into the city of Chicago where there's so many great Mexican restaurants, very much at all lately. So I'm like, I've got to fix that. I've got to get back. Maybe go to one of my favorite taquerias. If not, like go upscale at one of Rick Bayless's restaurants.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I mean he's the king of Mexican food in Chicago. And, I miss being able to go to his places on a regular basis. There is one tide me over spot here in the northern suburbs of Chicago, Jorge. It's a little burrito spot called El Famous Burrito. Yeah, it's not very authentic sounding, but the food is fantastic. They make marvelous El Pastor tacos. And, go on Taco Tuesday, my go-to order, 2 Al Pastors, and then 1 chili relleno taco. They make a pretty good chili relleno taco too. So, now I'm getting hungry and I might have to go there for dinner tonight. See if I can make it back before kickoff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Al Pastor, our amigo Mauricio, that's his 101 of tacos.
Oh,
so we need to make a trek out to Chicago, and we'll definitely get there. Oh, mi amigo. I always love hanging out with you. I always love, even when we chat briefly in Twitter, and just, yeah, you are a treasure. I really value your friendship, and I just thank you so much for being a part of my life and helping me. I want to close up shop. Definitely Familia Fits on Fantasy, so make sure to follow that. But mi amigo, let's close up shop. Let's point them to find everything.
Yeah, Jorge, it's always a joy to catch up with you and to talk. And I'm already looking forward to getting together again next year in Canton, if not sooner. So
Yes, hopefully.
thank you for having me on the show. People can find me at fantasypros.com. As you mentioned, they can find the Fits on Fantasy podcast. It usually comes on Tuesday morning each week. And they can get me on Twitter at Fits_FF.
Oh, familia. Follow him. Follow him. If you're following me, you're following him because I've acquired so many followers because of him. So I appreciate it just from him liking and commenting on things. So familia, we're gonna go get ready and watch Monday Night Football. But before then, please make sure to give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Also, go to fantasypoints.com. Put in that promo code 22familia10 and get 10% off. So 22familia10, and you find me at Jorge Martin on Twitter. I push everything out there, familiaffb.com. Anything the Familia FFB, just get there. Otra vez, to our invitado, Patricio, muchas gracias. And to you, everybody, remember, todos somos familia. Salud.